All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomas, and we do educational videos on this channel. Today is the 90th video where we've been reviewing the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. He discovered the reciprocal system way back around 1930. Had his first inklings, worked it out inductively over the course of the next 20 or 25 years, then came out with his two fundamental postulates, the first of which is the most important, and is basically that the universe is not made out of matter, the universe is not made out of energy, but the universe is made out of motion. Motion is the relationship between space and time. Space and time are reciprocals of each other, kind of in the same way that 3/4 is the reciprocal of 4/3. One is the, you flip them, invert them to convert from space to time. And space and time are both in 3 dimensions, or I would say at least 3 or 4 dimensions. And, we know space is like that, but by the reciprocal relation, time is also that way. What we know about time is that it's always progressing. It's always getting later and later and later. And by the reciprocal relation, therefore space also has that quality, which the Hubble telescope detected in the recession of the distant galaxies. Space and time are also come in discrete units only. There are no fractional units. There's a minimum unit of space and a minimum unit of time. Those units are very small, especially the one of time. 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time is the speed of light. The speed of light is not the maximum speed of the universe, as Einstein would have you to believe, but for Larson, the speed of light is the midpoint or the null point or even the origin of the universe. And that there is half of the universe that's actually moving faster than the speed of light, and half that we're familiar with that's moving slower than the speed of light. The half that's moving slower, our familiar world, is what Larson calls sector 1, or the material sector. The half that's moving faster than the speed of light, Larson calls sector 2, and he also calls it the cosmic sector. And particles, atoms from sector 1 grow by agglomeration, aggregation. They bond to each other until they get to their most complicated form, complex form, which is DNA, which has a few billion atoms per molecule, per 1 DNA molecule. And at that level, the material unit is eligible to be controlled by a cosmic sector unit from sector 2. And when that happens, we get the life unit. So for Larson, life is a combination of a material and a cosmic unit. The cosmic unit is, even though it's only a small part of the combination, it creates life. It's a control unit. Larson calls it a control unit. And so life starts from just a single-celled organism, and it evolves or develops over time up until it reaches its most complex level, which Larson says is the intelligent human being. And at that point, the intelligent human being becomes eligible to be controlled overall by a component from sector 3. Sector 3 is kind of pointing at that origin, or it's as Larson says, metaphysical or beyond space and time or independent of space and time. Now, the metaphysical region there is what other people might call God and the spirit world, and that region kind of comes into a competition with Sector 2 control. So Sector 2 is based on survival, life, and Sector 3 is based on good behavior or ethical behavior or moral behavior. And so there are times when those two conflict, and at that point, the human being is in between and needs to be able to make decisions about which to honor. And that is what you would call free will. Sector 3 communicates with with the life unit through various means such as ESP, intuition, religious revelation, scientific insight, visions, and these are all really have the same, it's the same mechanism, but we see it kind of differently depending primarily on how prepared we are. The messages that we're getting from Sector 3 are always correct, but they are subject to our translation, and so they're subject to our limitations in preparedness especially. So that's why a lot of those messages turn out wrong, is because we project upon them, or we don't have the proper way to translate them because we haven't really developed the language. Okay, now we are, in this review, we're looking at Larson's final book that came out after he died, called Beyond Space and Time. So this is really referring to Sector 3, referring to that metaphysical region. And we're in chapter 22 right here, I believe. It's called Humanism. And he was just kind of talking about humanism is kind of like the replacement for religion for secular people. And you know, he talks about how they all tend to think that humanism is kind of like in competition with religion or threatens to replace religion. But Larson's argument is more that the humanism works with religion to kind of get rid of the chaff from the religion and get rid of all the ritualistic mumbo jumbo and get down to the core of it, but that the religion is needed at the core, those religious values at the core, which he would say are from Sector 3, are often overshadowed by the Sector 2 stuff that is on the fringes, the mumbo jumbo and the ritual. So we're going to take over right here, or let Larson take over right here. It is quite evident from the arguments put forth by the humanists in support of their contentions that they are motivated to a considerable degree by what we may call pride, or less charitably, vanity. Those human individuals who realize that their knowledge is limited are usually prepared to accept the assertion that they need the help of those superhuman forces to meet their most serious problems. But those who have reason to believe that they are well grounded in the current wisdom of the human race have a tendency to resent such a suggestion. It is disturbing to them to be told that they are, in effect, second-class citizens, that there is a superior order of existence, and that the primary objective of human life is not to savor that life to the utmost, but to make some advance toward the superior status. They are particularly upset by the idea that one or more of the superior existences may be in a position to dictate the terms of life. He talks about Eric Fromm, who refers to them as authoritarian religions on the ground that they require surrender to a power transcending man, and this higher power has a right to force man to worship him. He is not ready to Fromm is not ready to dispense entirely with the concept of religion, but he wants to give it a humanistic character. Where religion uses the term God, he says it is only a symbol of man's own powers. And then Larson says, strangely enough, this vainglorious attitude coexists with an unusually keen realization of the wide margin by which the human race is currently failing to attain its full potential. Indeed, much of the driving power behind the humanistic movement stems from a recognition of the immensity of the task involved in reaching that goal, and the necessity of greater and more systematic efforts toward improvement if the goal is ever to be reached. Those who measure the magnitude of the task against the current rate of progress are often discouraged, and pessimism, explicit or implicit, is one of the problems of the humanist movement. This can hardly be described as a cheerful outlook, and it has little appeal to the common man. He was quoting Kurtz here, the random occurrence between two oblivions, that death is inevitable and that there is a tragic aspect to our lives. Okay, skipping forward a little bit. Our status is not second class. Rather, we are neophytes who have the opportunity to acquire full first-class status in due course. Man does, in fact, have all of the powers he needs if he develops his potential to the utmost. But the most significant of these are powers which he possesses by virtue of having an aspect of his personality that is independent of the physical universe. Sector 3, or he calls it level 3, when a human being exhibits characteristics of Sector 3. And is in touch with other such independent existences, some of which are more fully developed and are capable of providing him with advice and assistance. This is essentially the position of the transcendent religions. Whether we are, in fact, subject to the authority of a deity, as most religions contend, and humanism finds objectionable, is outside the scope of this work. The investigation has not been carried far enough to shed any light on this central religious issue, nor is it yet clear whether there is any basis from which an inquiry into the subject could be pursued. The answer would have to come from a revelatory or intuitive source, and as matters now stand, the purported revelations in this area are so numerous and so mutually contradictory that they provide nothing definite. Many readers will no doubt feel that lack of an answer to this fundamental question leaves the development of thought in these pages incomplete. It is therefore appropriate to reiterate that this present work is a report of the results of a pioneer scientific exploration of a field that has hitherto been outside the boundaries of science. As such, it cannot be expected to arrive at anything complete and conclusive. Its aim is to get a broad, general view of the heretofore unexplained sector of existence independent of the universe of space and time, to lay the foundation for additional explorations in the future, and to identify some of the means by which such explorations can be carried out. Okay, so he's saying that, we need some other people to come up and do these studies. This is just the pioneer investigation into this field. And, I feel Larson on this because so many people that I've talked to criticize Larson for getting something wrong or not presenting it clearly enough. And it's kind of like, your Larson is basically competing against the entire scientific establishment, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and he's one guy, and you're like comparing the two. Obviously he's not going to be able to come up with a body of work, although he almost did, that's going to be able to compare with what modern science has come up with over hundreds of years, with thousands of people being put to the task. Larson is trying to do something on a shoestring budget by himself, and he still, is favorable, does favorably against this giant, scientific establishment. Okay, now, religion, back to Larson, religion is the state of being grasped by an ultimate concern, a concern which qualifies all other concerns as preliminary and which itself contains the answer to the question of the meaning of our life. Paul Tillich classifies all isms, such as humanisms, that are based on secularism as quasi-religious, and he regards the attack of the quasi-religions on the religions proper as the most significant feature of the present-day religious scene. Today, the problems which have arisen out of this situation can no longer be neglected, he says. The particular aspect of these problems that is brought into focus by the findings of this work is the manner in which the substitution of secular objectives for the genuinely religious objectives impedes the progress of the human race toward the ultimate objective of its existence. We'll discuss this point in chapter 28. At this time, we will want to take note of the fact that there is also an inverse side to this picture. Indiscriminate, and again, whenever he uses the word inverse, he's evoking this space and time reciprocity. There is also an inverse side to this picture. Indiscriminate mixing of religious and secular objectives is detrimental not only to religion, but to secular life as well. When a religious organization takes a stand on any issue, it automatically stamps that position, whatever it may be, as morally right. Religion is devoted to upholding the right and combating the wrong. It follows, so the reasoning goes, that whatever a religious organization supports is right, and those in opposition are either ignorant or in league with the forces of unrighteousness. But in reality, a large and growing number of the issues on which present-day religious organizations are taking sides and working energetically in the ensuing conflicts are secular issues. Even if some of these issues, social, political, economic, etc., are actually susceptible to being decided on their merits, the decision can be based only on whether they are desirable, not whether they are morally right. Desirable is, he talked about that earlier. Desirable is like a sector 2 thing. Morally right is a sector 3 thing. In practice, there is seldom a clear-cut criterion of desirability that can be applied. These non-religious issues are almost invariably struggles for comparative advantage, questions as to who should get what. The gains that are made by some individuals as a result of the final decision, the gains that loom so large to the churches when they take up the battle positions, are made at the expense of others. One philosopher says, every social reform is ambiguous. It appears more just to those who profit from it than it does to those who do not. Furthermore, the ultimate gainers or losers are not always or even usually clearly indicated. For example, the issue in a labor dispute is ostensibly between the interests of the employer and those of the employees in the usual case. However, these appearances are deceptive. The employers directly affected may sustain losses as a result of the outcome of such a dispute, but this weakens their competitive positions and allows their competitors to make corresponding gains. Seldom, if ever, do employers as a whole bear the burden of a wage increase or other added item of expense resulting from the settlement. The operation of economic forces permits, indeed it requires, them to transfer the cost burden to the general public, that is, to all workers. The church or other religious organization that supports the labor union in the controversy is therefore doing nothing but assisting one group of workers to gain an economic advantage at the expense of another. The justification for treating this as a moral issue is not apparent, to say the least. Okay, I was hoping to get to the end of this chapter, but we got a couple paragraphs to go, and probably too much commentary on my part, but that is how it is. And we will wrap up this chapter tomorrow, and we'll move into chapter 23, which is called Religion Reexamined. All right, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you soon.